at the foundation now, we are going to be looking at how you build on the foundation. We are going to be looking at the structure. Paul was speaking and he simply says that, of course, we understand that we are God's building and we are instructed to let each one take heed on how he builds. As we learned last week, it is important to have a very strong foundation. But there is more to a house than just the foundation. So after the foundation have been laid, you have to build on it. In this passage, Paul makes it clear, yes, the foundation is important, but what you build on it and how you build on it is also equally very important. After the foundation, the strength of your house will be determined by two key things. Number one is the kind of structure that you build. Secondly is the materials that you use to build. One of the first things we should do, or we sort of be doing, is we must be intentional about your structure. I have come to understand that the trouble with many marriages is that there is no structure. We are so eager to build that we just let things unfold in a random fashion. The truth is that nothing gets better when it is left on its own. It's simply called the law of entropy. In other words, improvement is not a natural phenomenon. Things get worse unless there is an intervention from a higher quarters. And this is true of your marriage, this is true of your career, this is true of your family, this is true of your business. The truth is that marriages are not going to be strong by default. So I pose this question: when last did you do something deliberately to make your marriage strong or to make your marriage better? Is it possible that because you have neglected to put the necessary structures in place, that is the reason why there's the absence of peace, the absence of joy, and the absence of love in your marriage? There is an atmosphere that enhances joy. There is an atmosphere that enhances intimacy in a home. It doesn't just flow. For it to flow, you must put certain structures in place that will engender the enhancement of peace, of joy, of intimacy in your home. So here is the key: be intentional about your structure. The way you build a school is different from the way you build a hospital. The way you build a hotel is different from the way you build a supermarket or what we call a grocery store. They are designed differently. They are constructed differently. They are fitted out differently. But it all begins with intentionality. So I encourage you today to get out your pen and notebook and start designing the kind of marriage that you intend to build. For those of us single, this is a good classroom to begin to prepare for the D-Day. Start with a simple question. If your friends were to be interviewed and they were asked to describe your marriage, what top 5 words would you want all of them to use? That is the beginning of your structure. Another question: what is God's intention for this marriage? What will make this marriage become well-pleasing to God? And yet another question: what do we want this family to be known for? You can come up with your own questions and the answers to which will help you design the structure of your marriage. These are the broad headline questions, but you can take it one step further and ask yourself what I call the nitty-gritty questions, such as: what are the walls of this family like? What are the doors? What are the windows? What is the plumbing system, the electrical system, etc. of this family like? For example, wall speaks of the fixed, immovable points. It speaks of boundaries. It speaks of things that must not be crossed. It speaks of limits. There are structural and non-structural walls. What I mean by non-structural walls, there are some walls they used to demarcate a particular space, and you can move them, as you will. So you have movable and non-movable walls. What are the non-negotiable aspects of your marriage? The non-negotiable aspects of your family life. You must have those things in place. We are instructed not to remove the ancient landmarks, or what we call the boundary lines. Number 2, the doors talks about points of exit and points of entry through which traffic come in and out of your house. Doors keep certain things out and allow certain things in. Do you have doors in your marriage? Do you have a point through which you get some things and some people out? Or do you have a system where you keep certain things in the family? Does the whole world know your business? Do you go to town at every slide of you broadcast to the whole world? CNN. Windows are points, through which you let light and air in. They are points through which, you go and look beyond your wall. Do your family have a structure that allows for learning and improvement? Now we'll talk about the plumbing system. The plumbing system, or the plumbing, brings clean fresh water in, and it removes dirty water and other waste. Is there a system in place for flushing out negative things from your family? Negative things like unforgiveness, negative things like malice. Is there a system for bringing things that refresh and quench your thirst? The electrical system is what conducts power into your house. Is there a system for bringing the power of God in your house? When we talk about a system for bringing the power of God, you are talking about a system for family prayer altar, and all that. It brings the power of God into your house. Number 2, what are you building with? It's not just enough to have a strong structure. You must also build with a strong material. People get inferior things. The reason why you see building crashing all over the place is because they build with inferior materials. To be honest with us, I've never come across any couple that builds only with inferior, cheap materials. Neither have I come across any couple that builds only with good quality materials. So in most marriages, it's usually a mixture. When you look at certain marriages, you see that they are strong in certain areas and weak in other areas. So our aim is to ensure that will eliminate or bring to the barest minimum that aspect of our marriage that looks cheap, as if we are building with cheap and inferior materials. How do you achieve this? Just ask yourself 2 very simple questions. What are the things we do which strengthen this marriage? Number 2, what are the things we do which weaken this marriage? Now, to answer these questions, you have to ask yourself another 2 simple questions. Now, forget about your spouse for a moment. We are focusing on you right now. So you should be asking yourself, what are the things I do which impact my spouse in a positive way, that strengthen their self-esteem, that make them feel loved? Those are the things that strengthen your marriage. Secondly, what are the things that I do that impact my spouse in a negative way? For example, what are the things that upset them? What are the things that undermine them? These are the things that weaken your marriage. If you look very closely, you'll find that the answer to both questions are usually a short list, a handful of them in both cases. You'll find out that the things which your spouse complain about are usually the same thing over and over and over again. Truth be told, we can do something about it if you really put your mind to it. But the trouble is that you have concluded that those things that matter to your spouse is not important to you. When next you think like that, just know you have to stop blaming the devil, because you know that the power to strengthen or weaken your marriage is in your hands. Somebody is asking me, Pastor Ike, are you saying that I'm solely responsible for all the problems in our marriage? No, your spouse have their own part too. Then, of course, there are what we call the external storms or external forces, what we studied last week about the storm, remember. But if you do what you can to strengthen your marriage, the chances of standing strong when the storms comes is really that simple. I challenge you to go and increase the thing that strengthens your marriage and eliminate the things that weaken your marriage.